Yes.
So with that, we'll get started. Candidates, you have 1 minute to answer each question, and you'll be given a 1 minute opening statement. To begin with, the order is randomized each time, and I will call on you. I'll give you a 10-second warning. The gavel. Try and keep it quiet so it doesn't startle you. It should be about this loud. And you ready to begin the studies? Good. Great. In that case, we'll start with Libby. If you'd like to deliver an opening statement, then might.
Hi, I'm Libby. I'm running to be activities officer because societies, groups, and arts have really shaped my time at uni, and was so important to me. I want to make sure that all of our amazing groups can keep doing their amazing work and that as many people as possible can get involved. So some of my main manifesto points are providing more funding for students to take part in societies, working with academic societies to create support groups and build community, working with organisations outside the university to provide more opportunities to student groups to do things in the city and smoother running of events in external venues and advertising, and also to work with the other officers to provide more bus routes to campus as this impacts sustainability and routes.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Olivia. Second statement.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm running for activities officer because after running for sports officer for a year, I would love to translate that experience to support a different set of groups of students, so all culture and every single type of student. And I feel like I've done an okay job, and there's a lot of things that I can see that I'd like to change or improve in our current society kind of area of the SU, as well as improving the buses. And that is something that if I can talk about today, that would be nice. But yeah, I want to be an activity officer because it's very nice getting to support every type of student.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Sam.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Sam. I'm running to be your activities officer. I've been really fortunate across the years to have worked on a number of projects across the SU. I've been really committed about trying to support societies the best way that I can and try and push for more funding and better opportunities for you as students. My whole manifesto is online. It's about 24, 25 points long, but the main areas are really helping student groups, making sure that we can support them as much as we can to really put on the events and not worry too much about paperwork, and also really leading on sustainability whilst improving student options by increasing funding for student opportunities and also really helping them to enhance their development programs as well.
Thank you. Candidates, just if I could remind you to try and speak into the microphones just so Campus TV can get everything. We'll now move on to question 1 for all candidates. In general, what do you think is the greatest challenge facing students right now? And we'll start with Olivia.
I reckon the greatest challenge facing students will be cost of living. We are currently in a bit of a crisis where everything seems to be going up every single year, every single month. And that is these are points that I want to tackle going into my year as activities officer. The main thing I would be focusing on would be buses and trying to implement a price cap for students. But there are so many other things we can do as a student union, such as holding a food bank, which is something we have done in the past, and it's something that I would love to extend into next year. And making sure housing is as fair as possible for students and they can find affordable housing throughout Bath.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Sam for the second response.
Yeah, absolutely. I think cost of living is definitely something which is affecting all of us as students, and as well as sort of the housing strategy as well. I think a really important issue for students is actually leaning on sustainability. We know as students, we are really climate conscious. We want to make sure that what we're doing is good for the planet. And that would really come with being able to establish sort of a clear sustainability action plan, and really being able to work with students on exactly what they want to see. And it's more just as well, just supporting students in general. I think making sure that they have that, they reduce the excessive workload and are really able to focus on what they do best, which is delivering events and opportunities for our students.
Thank you. And then finally, Libby.
I also think the cost of living is a major problem for students. I would want to tackle this through my points about creating more bus routes in order to improve housing options for students and also the funding point. I think another big issue that stems from that is loneliness, because a lot of students don't feel part of the community because they're unable to take part in societies and things because of having to work and having to spend more time worrying about finances and things. So trying to build communities to tackle that loneliness as well.
Thank you. Just before we move on to the second question, we will take audience questions. If you'd like to scan the QR code found on most of the chairs in the room, we will pick a few at the end. On to question 2. You have all held committee roles in SU groups. What do you think is the number one barrier for committee members that the SU can fix? We'll start with Sam this time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been really fortunate to have worked with committee members throughout my time here at Bath, particularly working with our arts groups. I think the one thing which is really holding students' groups back is really this administrative process. Now, we understand completely that from a legal perspective, we have to have these processes in place. But compared to student unions across Europe, they don't have the same kind of level of that excessive workload on our student groups. We know that student groups want to be out there running their events, giving opportunities to students. So if we can help streamline, make that kind of admin process, work on the event planners, whilst ensuring that, yes, all the necessary areas are covered, but actually making sure that we support students the best we can to run events. So I think that's kind of the biggest issue. It's actually making sure that we give student groups the right tools and the right resources to run the best events that they possibly can do.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Libby.
Yeah, so I think communication is a big issue that will be a barrier to committee members. Communication with the SU, lots of times, I don't know if the training is up to date, and I would really look into that committee member training and making sure that everybody knows what they're doing. Also, communication with external organizations, which is why I really want to work on building those relationships and having those relationships in place, so that when student groups do want to work with various different other groups and outside organizations, they have that foundation of a relationship to assist with all of that communication.
Thank you. And finally, Olivia.
Yeah, so I've obviously worked in a committee and as sport officer overseeing a lot of committees. So I can say there's a few barriers. The main ones to me being finance and storage. A lot of clubs do not have enough storage, and that is something that we will need to commit to as a student union to figure out how we can resolve this and optimize it for all the clubs. As well as finance, a lot of clubs do not know how to operate their finances properly, and this is something I've also mentioned in my manifesto about letting clubs know how to deal with this, how to get more money, etc., etc. Mainly communication. A lot of clubs could know more stuff if it was just told to them at the start of the year in a more clear way. So that's something that I would be looking into doing.
Thank you.
On to question 3. Increases in cost of living has had a profound effect on all students, making participation in extracurriculars difficult. What do you think is the priority for supporting student involvement in societies? We'll start with Libby.
So one of the priorities on my manifesto is providing funding for individual students to take part in societies. I know some of this funding exists, but it's not necessarily fit for purpose in terms of ongoing events like weekly classes. And yeah, I think a great solution is providing that funding to take part in those societies. Yeah, I was going to say something else, but it's gone. So yeah, funding.
Thank you. We'll move on to Olivia.
Can I just get the question again? You slightly cut out, but I didn't want to be rude.
Right. Increases in cost of living has had a profound effect on all students, making participation in extracurriculars difficult. What do you think is the priority for supporting student involvement in societies?
It's definitely improving a free recreational offer for members so that they're not having to dip into their pockets and try and find that money which they can't afford to spend. So that involves doing stuff on campus and more than not doing it in pubs. Just improving a free offer, and given on that note, you could also improve society funding. I think that is something that needs to be worked upon in the years of coming, because it's very different between sport and societies, and societies get a little bit, that is underwhelming how they're treated with the finances. So yeah, I'm with Libby, so I'm going to say funding, but I'm also going to say improving a free offer.
Thank you. And finally, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the kind of things that I'll say have already been said as well. I completely agree with Libby as well, kind of making sure that we expand that funding opportunity as well. The eligibility criteria on some of our more sort of things like society membership funds and alumni fund maybe aren't as broad as they need to be to ensure that we're supporting all students. So really expanding funding and support for those student-led activities and initiatives. And I think continuing to offer some of these great free recreational activities or very low-cost ones. I know here in arts, we have these incredible Take a Break program, the Feel Good Fridays, where students can really get involved in these activities at a low cost. And whilst these events might not be, the most attended events on campus, for those students that attend it, it really is sort of the lifeline really to still keep active and engaged in the student community.
Thank you. We'll move on to the fourth question. The Edge is a key building within the activities officer's remit. How would you utilise the Edge to its full potential? We'll start with Olivia.
So the Edge is something that I've put in my manifesto, and I would like to give it a little bit of a decor change to kind of make it feel more homely for students. At the minute, it doesn't really. I work in there every day, and you don't see as many students as you would like in there. So I would make sure it got a proper promotion, and I would make sure students knew what was happening in the Edge. So this would probably involve doing more stuff around Freshers Week, which would get more freshers into the Edge, and keeping this up throughout the entire year. Obviously, there's a new cafe coming into the Edge, hopefully, in the summer. So I would make sure that anything I did would fall in line with this cafe and make sure that that was properly getting used.
Thank you. Next to respond will be Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. So compared to where sort of the Edge was a few years ago in first year when I was the arts liaison, the Edge has really come leaps and bounds compared to where it used to be. But definitely space is still an issue. We are out sort of, we have more groups wanting to use our space than we have space available. But we do also know that within the Edge, there are so many more spaces which we could utilize. So really working with the university on a transitional plan to make sure that we can take over all aspects of the Edge. We have a massive art gallery downstairs, which is currently closed to the students, which could be an excellent space. We've still got more space, which cameras using on level 1. And also the lecture theatre as well. It's currently used for lectures in the weekday, which I still find crazy. But I don't think it should be the student union's responsibility to take over from the university where they have failed to give a lack of adequate space for students to, have lectures.
Thank you. And finally, Libby.
Yeah, so I think that the use of space in the Edge needs to be prioritized. So going through each room and deciding what are the priorities for this room. For example, the Western Studio, I know this year, has been used as a dressing room for a lot of shows. And it in itself is a theatre and a amazing space. So using it as a dressing room feels like a waste of space. And so I want to really work on the priorities of each room, monitoring bookings, making sure that the regular rehearsal slots are being used, because obviously if you have a booking every week, you're not going to bother to cancel it if you don't need it, but another group might need it. Also, I think the foyer is a really lovely social space, and making sure that it maintains that sort of social aspect and that gathering place. I am a big fan of the squares. I know that it's controversial, but yeah, the sort of homely feel of the foyer, keeping that up and making sure that everyone knows that it's a social space.
Thank you. We'll now move on to question 5. Sustainability is one of the core parts of the role, but in recent years there's been little activity in this area. How do you propose to reignite efforts to tackle such a large problem? We'll start with Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyone that knows me knows sustainability is a real passionate part of this program. A few years ago, I was really pleased to be the lead on bringing Green Week back to the university, something which the university has now sustained throughout the last few years, which has been great. I think what really needs to be done is establishing a really clear SU sustainability action plan that's publicly available and is written and worked on with student groups. Also continuing to apply pressure to the university. We know the university, as whilst in their best efforts to try and reach their net zero target, it's going to be really difficult for them to reach. I think as well, developing that long-term strategy for climate awareness and bringing back things like sustainable accreditation programs, which the SU used to have very publicly, which has now sort of been tucked away on a small page on the website. It's all about building awareness and making sure that all of our actions are student-led.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Libby.
Yeah, so I think that providing student groups with ideas of activities and events that they can do, which will contribute to an overall sustainability plan, and allowing students opportunity to be educated on systematic change in sustainability and the way that we can, the way that it's not an individual thing, it's about the wider community. And then also, I say this, and then also closer to home things like strategizing the locations of bins and making sure that the correct bins are available for the people who need them to increase recycling.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to Olivia.
Yeah, so sustainability is something that is very important to every university, including ours. But how I would definitely start would be to create a plan for sustainability, as I don't think there's one in place so far at the minute. And from there, you can kind of find all the different avenues to improve sustainability. So, as an issue, we have a very large voice for students. So, we could use all our socials to start promoting more sustainable methods of living, such as using reusable cups, and then we can lobby the university to implement this more and more into student life. Um, how else we could improve sustainability would be, as an activities officer, you could run workshops. So you could run workshops with all the committee members, and you could get them promoting sustainability within their own groups. And that way, it's more of a student voice on sustainability than a staff-led one.
Thank you. We are now moving on to the first audience submitted question. How might you try and support academic societies to allow them to support their students? We'll start with Olivia.
And we say that really
Yeah, no problem. How might you try and support academic societies to allow them to support their students?
I think it's something we work on this year. Community, so all socials and everything I think for one. So from like learning to social life, great one community space, a better hub, or the academic in the society. So probably the best way to go. You don't okay right now. But yeah, it's create more of a community that feels the academic writers.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree on that. And I think actually seeing how these academic societies have really sort of improved in the last few years has been great to see. It's really about making sure that they build their own communities as well. I think what we're seeing is a lot of these academic societies are really running events which help sort of enhance their professional development skills and transferable skills, which is something which is really important, particularly employability after you leave university. So really making sure that we as an SU can provide that funding and support, whether that be increasing the external speakers, making sure that they have the funding to do these things, and making sure that we can expand these programs and really prioritize career advice for those students, particularly those who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, and really integrate them into our academic communities as well.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Libby.
In terms of building academic community, I think there's a lot of students who fall through the cracks. At Bath, we have a huge amount of students who go on placement years, and often when they return from those placement years, they have lost that feeling of community and those friends on their course. So I really want to work with academic societies to create study, social and support groups for students who perhaps have returned from placement or have taken time out of study or have retaken a year, which I did, and make sure that there are those groups available for them to find friends within their course and to be able to have that support from other people, just the like casual peer support of, oh, I'm struggling, are you struggling too? So yeah, that's what I really want to work on in terms of academic societies.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the second audience submitted question. Can you all say how you plan to practically improve the buses? Previous SU officers have tried to do this, yet bus prices have continued to rise. So what realistic and practical plans do you have? We'll start with Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know buses have been a really big issue for this university. Even when you look at when the university was founded, public transport was mentioned as an issue. And I think it's really hard to be able to promise that we'll keep the price caps low. We'll make sure that we can always make sure that the buses have student fares, because it is really hard when working with external companies. We've seen that this year. So I think it is really applying pressure on the university to lobby, because the university do have a lot of power when it comes to this. I really do not believe that they're using their full power to really be able to try and do that. So really campaigning for keeping the prices as low as possible and making sure that our transport plan remains sustainable, ensuring that we have more sustainable ways to get up to campus, and make sure the university continue to expand schemes like the e-scooters, like the bike rental schemes, and make those sort of things more available for students, because currently it's really focused on staff only.
Thank you. And we'll move on to Libby next.
Yeah, so I'd like to really work on building relationships with the bus company, with the local council, with the university, so that we have those things in place for opening up those discussions. Really working on lobbying the bus companies and the university and the local council to improve things. I also think that having more bus routes is also a priority on top of prices, because I know that a lot of students feel that the only place they can live is in Oldfield because that's where the buses are. And that really contributes to the cost of living issue. So that's another thing I would work on as well as just price.
Thank you. And finally, Olivia.
Yes, obviously you'll see a lot of us has put buses in their manifesto, and this year that also now includes me. I've tried to be a little bit more realistic about it because trying to get First Bus to change their prices is going to be almost impossible. So what I've said in my manifesto and what I'm going to try and do, and what I've technically is convene with the NUS, so that's the National Union of Students. I already know quite a few of them, and I've seen in my manifesto, and they said this would be something they'd be happy to work on with me with, and that is to lobby the Parliament to implement a student bus price cap. So currently this doesn't exist, and the price cap is £3 alongside any bus ticket, but it'd be something that I would work on. We would take to NUS something like Lead and Change. We would get it communicated with other student officers around the entire country. And then we would take it to a lobby day outside of Parliament and try and make some noise and some voice. And that way we can maybe get something in Parliament.
Your minute has elapsed.
Oh, sorry, I can't hear the beep, so
Sorry.
that's okay. But yeah, that's how.
And on to the next audience submitted question. Why do you think extracurricular opportunities such as arts, societies and volunteering are important to the student experience? We'll start with Libby.
I think that arts, societies and volunteering are so important to the student experience. My experience at university has been that most of my friends, most of my activities, most of my time has been spent on arts and societies. And I think that the university experience is so much bigger than just your degree. And I think a lot of people come to university with that expectation to like discover new things about themselves, find amazing friends, have really exciting opportunities. So I think, yeah, it's so important to the student experience, and we really need to enhance those opportunities and widen them to more students, because there are lots of amazing things that are happening within the SU. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I could put it any better, really. Like, arts has been a huge part of my life here as well. And it's really been important in establishing my sense of community. And I think this is why arts and other recreational extracurricular activities are so important for students. You know, we do have an issue at the university where not every student feels part of the community. I really do believe community is what you make it yourself. Everyone will have different opinions on how they feel like they belong. So really being able to support these groups, being able to give them those resources to ensure and kind of empower the student leaders to make every student feel included and part of the community. And I think arts in particular is a fantastic way to do it, because we have such an array, whether that be performing or non-performing groups. Each really gives students that sense of pride and empowerment. And yeah, I think it's such an important sector to keep holding.
Thank you. And finally, Olivia.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with these two, 100%. Coming to university, to me, obviously you come for a degree, but once you get here, you'll find there is an entire different part of university which you don't usually see, and that is student life. And to me, this is the most amazing part of being a student, is all the societies and groups that you can join, because this is where you make friends for life. This is where you find your hobbies. This is where you get to do stuff that you wouldn't really get to do before university, perhaps. And it's where, I think all societies, arts included, dance included, everything, and it's a perfect way of taking the step from one part of your life to the next part, and enjoying yourself while doing it, and stopping loneliness.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the next question, which is, how will you ensure you provide equal support between all the groups you represent? And we'll start with Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very easy for us to say, oh, this sector is amazing, we can put all our funding behind that. But we need to remember that as in activities, we have lots of different groups and lots of different areas. So I will really make sure, as a potential future activities officer, that we look at funding across the board, making sure that even if some student groups maybe do more than others, that our attention is not just on those groups, that we're actually looking at societies that maybe only have a couple of events a year, and really ensuring that they have the resources to go their full potential. And I know it sounds a bit of a cliche, but I really do think it is important. This is how people feel part of our community. So really being able to expand that funding, expand those opportunities, and really work with committees to give them all the power that they need to put these things on.
Thank you. We'll move on to Olivia.
I think the main thing is just listen. There's a lot of groups, obviously, and you can't with the same amount of budget for each one. There's stuff that more than others, but it's to make sure you listen to what each club wants and try to provide them with that so they provide the perfect offer for their students. And I think that's really all I need to say.
Thank you. And finally, Libby.
Yeah, I think having an overarching funding scheme that as many people as possible are aware of, improving that communication between the SU and societies so that all of the societies and groups get have access to the same level of support. They're not having to go and it's not dependent on who's most likely to go and ask for it. And also, like as an activities officer, making time for each individual society, ensuring that they're supported, making sure I'm in meetings and catch up with the societies so that they feel that they are supported equally by the SU.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. What would you prioritise in your first 3 months in the role? We'll start with Libby.
So in my first 3 months, the first thing I would want to look at is funding, as I've talked about a lot. Reforming the Alumni Access Fund exists to provide individual students with funding to take part in societies. I would be interested in reforming it to include more activities and like ongoing activities, because currently students can only apply for one of the money during the year. So working on building that funding if needed, that funding in the first 3 months, and also when the university starts back in Freshers Week, making sure that I immediately meet with each society and make sure that everyone knows what the priorities are and listen to what their priorities are for the year.
Thank you. We'll move on to Olivia.
So I will be building, if I get elected in, a guide to societies and club groups. So that will be something that gives every club all the FAQs and everything they'll need to know for the entire year ahead. And that will be done in the first couple of months before Freshers Week. I'll also be straight on with the NUS and trying to see what we can do at the buses. And obviously, funding as well, making sure the clubs are happy with their finances going into the year ahead, ready for Freshers. Yeah.
Thank you. And finally, Sam.
Yeah, I think the first priority, particularly as student groups have that handover period where new committees come in over the summer, really making sure that we're as prepared for that as we can be. And that was really focusing on working on streamlining our admin processes. So we know that student groups, particularly over the summer where they have maybe a bit more time, are able to commit that more time to filling out all these forms, looking at event planners, but actually being sure that long-term sustainably we're able to reduce that excessive workload, particularly when the new term starts. So we're basically getting ready for the new semester. I think then really starting to focus on the sustainability action plan. Sustainability is not something that we can just put a plan together in a week. It is a long-term project. So really be able to talk and communicate with societies and finding out exactly what they want to do to address some of the biggest issues that students are currently facing.
Thank you. We'll now be moving on to closing statements. Any unanswered questions that were submitted from the audience will be sent to candidates. For closing statements, they'll be 30 seconds long, and we will start with timer. Sam.
My full manifesto, you can see online, but I really hope today I've been able to convince you that I do know the challenges and I have the experience for this role. I bring a genuine passion to wanting to help student societies and really create and drive positive change across our student body and really foster a strong sense of community at Bar.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Olivia.
If you would like to read my full manifesto, it's obviously online, but having done an officer role, having all that experience, this is something that I would be very passionate about, and I would put everything into supporting every single student, no matter where you come from. I want to amplify your voice, no matter its volume. So I hope I can earn your vote.
Thank you. And to close out the session, Libby.
So my manifesto is all about making sure as many people as possible are able to benefit from the amazing opportunities that the SU has to offer. I'm someone who has first-hand experience being in society, being an active member, being a committee member, and I'm really passionate about art societies groups and sustainability. So look, for me, that sounds good to you.
Thank you. And that is the end of activities. Questions to candidates coming.